Hello everyone and welcome back. Okay, so there's been quite a change actually to the kit car, and what I've done along with John Burrows, who is the owner of the kit car company, the Gentry kit car company, we've been discussing it, and we've come to the conclusion that it's probably best if I strip all the suspension and change it. Now the reason being is that when I ordered this, I was going to go for a Triumph Spitfire based donor, which is what I did. So that would have included the engine, all the suspension, differential, etc. And so he supplied me with all the donor parts for the Triumph Spitfire, including the engine, gearbox, etc. What's happened since then, as you know, is that I've gone, but I would really prefer a Vitesse 6-cylinder engine. The chassis is a Vitesse chassis, so that's fine. But of course the suspension is Spitfire. So what we've agreed is that he will supply me with a Vitesse differential and all the running gear at the back for that, and I said I will get some front suspension Vitesse for it. Now I will have obviously the Spitfire stuff left over. John's going to be taking back the Spitfire differential because I don't need that, and so I've got quite a bit of the stuff at the back here which I'll show you later, and I bought a brand new Spitfire rear leaf spring. Now the reason I've gone for a Spitfire, again talking to John, is because of the weight differential between the Vitesse and the kit car. I really don't want a heavy duty spring at the back. So what they tend to do is use a Spitfire leaf spring. So I've got a Spitfire brand new leaf spring down here, and I'm in the process of changing the bushes on it to these, bear with me, which are the Polybush. Get one out for you. Which are these, which are the Polybush bushes instead of the standard bushes, which are rubber, and they operate in a completely different way. I'll explain this later on in the video, but the standard bushes operate in a completely different way to the Polybushes, and these give you a much better ride, and they're impervious to water, oil, grease, etc. so they don't rot, and they're just a really good replacement for the standard bushes. That's a brand new bush, but I've taken that out and I should be replacing it with that, and I'll show you in the video later how I'm doing that. These are a bit of a nightmare to take out, but these are very easy to put in. So I will show you that process later. So it's all change. So it's all going to be Vitesse now, apart from the rear leaf spring, and that's going to be Spitfire, but that's the only Spitfire bit on it now. So I've got Spitfire, Vitesse engine, Vitesse gearbox, Vitesse prop shaft, Vitesse suspension and differential, and that's it. as I say, the only thing is the rear leaf spring, which is a direct replacement, so that's no issue. So I shall be later on, after this part of the video, I will be putting the camera down here somewhere so that you can see me changing the bushes on the leaf spring, and I will also be teasing. I'll also be showing you the parts which I've got ready for the Vitesse. John is hopefully coming at the weekend with the Vitesse differential, so hopefully by the end of the weekend I will have, it's Thursday today, I will have all new suspension on it, replaced from the Spitfire to the Vitesse. Sounds long-winded, but it isn't. It's but this is the sort of thing I was expecting in this build. It's you do make plans, and then you look at it and you go, really, I'm not quite so sure now. But I'm glad I've gone the Vitesse route. I really am. It's going to give me the extra oomph I want. It's a better engine, I think. It sounds beautiful, as you can tell from the intro. That's a Vitesse engine sound with a sports exhaust. Yeah, so I have made up the cardboard templates for the new engine mounting, so when I take all the front suspension off, which is one of the reasons why I've got to take it off, is so that I can make up the new engine mountings. So I've got to do it anyway, so I might as well replace it with the Vitesse stuff. It's got bigger brakes, it's so much more beefy, the suspension, than the Spitfire. Okay, so that's the intro done. So I will put the camera over there somewhere, and I will show you the taking out and the installation of the bushes on the rear leaf spring. Okay, so I will see you in a minute. It's ever so bright out there, lovely day. Yeah, so I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so bye for now. Right, hello again. Okay, so let's go through these bushes, suspension bushes. The bushes actually go through each end of the leaf spring. So I've taken this old bush out from here, and I've done that by using, and I'll show you how I do the other end. I've done that by using some bush extractor tools which I've got here around me, and it's such a simple way of doing it. You can get these bushes out by either burning the rubber out, or hacksawing them, or using different methods, but if you've got the right tools, then it makes life just so much easier. So the way these bushes work, if you can see at the end there's a steel tube with, in the middle, with surrounded by rubber, and then that is then got another steel tube over the top. So it's a combination of two steel tubes with rubber in between them. Now that rubber is bonded to both the outer and the inner tube. So what happens is that if you imagine the bolt going like that, if you imagine the bolt going through, the suspension actually relies, or rather the bush relies, on the stiffness of the rubber in between, because everything is clamped. So when the leaf spring is moving like this, what's happening is actually it's the rubber which is creating the torsional difference between the spring moving and the bolt clamping it. So what's happening is that you are getting the rubber absorbing any impacts from the road wheels or whatever, and all the time the suspension is going up and down, the leaf spring is rotating a little like this, but it's rotating through the torsion of the rubber. I hope that makes sense. It's not that this does not turn at all in the leaf spring. It's static, it stays still, and the only thing which turns, if it turns, is the rubber. Now with the Polybushes, they work totally differently. So when you insert one of these Polybushes, this blue silicone stays put in the leaf spring exactly like that one does, but the difference is this has a tube inside like that, and what happens is the tube rotates with inside this polyurethane bush. So there is no rubber holding this back like on the previous one. It's actually turning like a bearing, and so that gives you, along with the silicone, it gives you a very good ride, because what's happening is that the silicone is absorbing the shock on the springs as it's going, and the tube is rotating. I mean, it only rotates a fraction of an inch as it's going up and down over bumps, but it's not reliant on the stiffness of the rubber in that bush, and that bush will perish because it's rubber. It's not excuse me, it's not impervious to oil, grease, water, etc. It will gradually rot, and it will also rot because of the constant movement the rubber is having to go through, going up and down the suspension. This, on the other hand, is using a bearing. I'll poke it out. It's using this as a bearing, so it rotates. Clever, eh? And they are very easy to put in. So that's my next job, is to put this polyurethane bush into here. And what it is, you can see it's got a lip at both ends, one there and one there, and that's what holds it in to the spring. These is a tight fit, and then you push it in until one of the lips comes through the other side, and then it locks it into position. So let's give it a go and see what happens. Let's make sure you can see what I'm doing. Move the spring over there, hopefully you can see that. There, that should be better. So what we do, we put some grease on it, which I use is silicone grease. Put a whole load over it. And then using the sorry about that, motorbikes. Obviously a Jolly Boys outing. So we insert without the tube, the polybush over the top of that thread, and we put it roughly into position. Let's cover this grease up, and then we attach the other parts. And what I want is that tube. This is all part and parcel of the kit for taking out and inserting bushes. I'll tighten this up and I'll show you the assembly of it before I go ahead and push it in. I mean, you can use a press if you've got a machine press. You can use a press to put this in. I haven't got a machine press, but this is fine. This will do it. So you gradually tighten it up until it all locks into position. Nearly there. You're going to make sure that everything is central, because you don't want that bush going in crooked. So getting it started is really important. That you don't do it crooked. It will self-center itself once it gets started, but it's getting this thing started which is the critical bit. Now I'm just turning this by hand, and it's already going in. There we go, so that's already starting to go in just by turning it by hand, so I'm not using any spanners. And that's going in quite centrally. See how easy that's going in. Putting one of these in would be a nasty process. It's a horrible job. And some of these polybushes, they come in two halves, so you can literally put one side in and one side in, job done. You don't need any of this to do it. Almost in. There we go. Now hopefully, if I undo this side, I should be able to see the lip, which I can. Yep, that's done. So these polybushes have so many advantages over the normal standard bushes you get. And all that suspension has got polybushes in. And there we go. That's one bush in. And then get some more grease. Poke some in the heel. Put some on here. And we just slide that bush in, the steel bush. and we can call that job done. That's it. One bush. So now what I've got to do is to throw that. What I've got to do now is to turn this spring round and do the other end. They're bloody heavy. Right, so here is the old bush in here. If you can see that. That's the old bush in there. Well, it's a brand new bush, but it's the old style bush, put it that way. So we need to take that out. So what you have to do is to find, and I use a long tube spanner, so that it goes up against the old bush. Actually, I don't need that on there. Take that off. And then I need that. That. And that. So keep tightening it until it starts grabbing. So what's happening is that, bear with me, so what's happening is that I will tighten this side and this will lock up, and because I'm tightening here, it will start pushing or pulling this bush through. This is a large diameter here, which all locks into these spaces, and it will gradually draw the bush through, in theory. But it did last time, so I'm hoping that that's what will happen this time. Now these are these bushes are a push fit into the leaf spring. They're pushed in with a press, and you can see the score lines of where it's been put in, and I've pushed it out. Here we go. And all of a sudden it will pop out. There we go. Alright, now we just got to fight with this thing to get it off. There we go. That's the second one off. Right, so we need to do now exactly the same process with the other bush. There we go. That's now popped back into position. A bit of grease on the tube. Slide that into position. Job done. There we go. So that is now the bushes into position and done. So what's the difference between this spring I've got here and the existing spring I've got on the car at the moment? Well, this is a modified spring, and I'll show you. Just let me get the bits and pieces so you can understand what I'm talking about. Bear with me. When the Triumph Spitfire, GT6, Vitesse, when they came out, they had a lot of complaints and sales dropped off because of the rear suspension problems, because the wheels used to kick in on certain cornering. So after, I don't know how long it was, a couple of years I think, Triumph looked at it and they came up with a solution called the swing spring. Now the Vitesse slightly changed even after this modification, in that it had quite a different setup, but that's a much later, on the Mark II, late Mark IIs, where they had a thing called Rotoflex shafts. And they had proper independent suspension with wishbones, etc. But this was the modification made in between the first one and the third one, if you like, and it's called the swing spring. And what they did, they made a plate which goes over the top, which is very similar. But what happened was that they put this, I'll take this out, so you've got a bolt and a tube, and that plate goes over the top, and this tube here goes through some raised areas here. So the tube goes through, slide that over the top, and then you put a bolt through it. So it goes through the tube, goes through the whole lot. So what happens is that this spring is then allowed to pivot like that on that bush through there. Before, this was completely static and bolted flat firmly to the differential. So what they did, they made this modification and they called it the swing spring. So the whole lot would rotate very slightly between either side through this pivot here. So I've got this plate now, which is different to what I've got on there at the moment. That's a standard fixed spring. So this is now the swing spring. So with the Polybushes, this effort for the spring, and a thicker anti-roll bar up the front, which is also a major help, it stops a lot of that kicking in when you lift off the throttle if you go around the corner. And that's what the issue was. If you were going around the corner and you lifted off the throttle, the back wheels would kick in and send you off into the nearest hedge, which is not a good idea. So this now is completely up to date as regards the rear suspension. So the rear leaf spring on that at the moment is coming off and is being replaced with this. What I've got to do is, to fit all this, I've got to take the spring apart. So this spring is held together with these U-clamps here, here and here. So you have to clamp the leaves with some G-clamps, undo these bolts, that releases these clamps, that allows you then to take the spring apart. You then slide that over the top, which enables you, well, that doesn't enable you, but you then have a plate here which goes in between the bottom and the second to bottom leaf spring. That goes in there. You've then got a pad, and again I've got a polyurethane pad that sits over the top, so all that gets wedged in between here and here, like that. And then the plate goes over the top, and that allows you then to pass the bolt through. Sounds all complicated, doesn't it? But it's not, it's just sounds it. You don't buy the spring with all this gubbins. You have to take the spring apart, put it on, and then also to enable these leaves to move over the top of each other. I don't know if you can see on camera, but there is a dimple just here, and they're strategically placed along the leaves, and underneath that dimple is another rubber pad, so that takes care of any movement. It allows the leaves to slightly move across each other like that. So it's a clever piece of kit. So I should be able to now safely install this leaf spring. Once I've got all this on, taking it all apart, put this on, I will then be able to put this leaf spring in, knowing that the rear end is going to behave itself a whole lot better than what it would have done. Right, so I will shut the camera down. That's all I've got for the moment to show you. But I will shut the camera down now. I'll have my normal cigarette break, and then I'll come back and I'll show you over there what I've got extra since the last time I showed you. Okay, so I will speak to you in a minute. Okay, so bye for now. Bye. Hi again. Right, so here's a few parts which have arrived today, which is primarily the front hub assembly for left and right hand side. So you've got the two hubs there and there with the discs, the dust shields there and there, calipers which are type 16, which is a slightly beefier caliper than, take you over to here, than these calipers which are type 14, which are Spitfire. So all that lot there is going to come off and be replaced by this lot. So I'd say the calipers, caliper mounting brackets there and there, and this is the critical bit, the vertical links. So I've got down here, I've got the two trunnions, lower trunnion, so it's left hand and right hand thread, that's right hand thread and left hand thread for the lower trunnions, and then up the top is the upper trunnion or ball joint. Links there which get bolted onto this here for the steering. So I need to give all this lot of clean up. I will see how these calipers clean up and see if the pistons are sealed on the inside. I don't know if they're sealed, they probably are, they normally are, but I shall get new brake pads, although the brake pads in there are actually not too bad, but I should get new ones anyway. But the first thing really is to open them up and to see if the pistons are seized. If they are, then I should just get some new calipers. If not, then I'll clean them up. New discs, but the hubs are okay. New bearings for them, obviously. These dust shields are totaled. They are absolutely kaput. But I have got brand new stainless ones here, which are mirror finish. So they are not going to rust. They will get dirty, but they won't rust. And the difference between the two is the old one, that's the new one. So there's quite a bit of difference. So along with that, I've also got something which is as rare as hen's teeth, and that is the airbox, would you believe it, off a Vitesse 6-cylinder. And they are really hard to come by, and that will literally fit over the top of the carburetors. Now what some people do, they just put a pancake air filter over the top of each one, like that. Yeah, that way. So it fits like that on both sides, there and there, but these actually go inside the airbox, and that box contains all the nuts, bolts and hoses, etc., and a new sealing strip to go along this outer edge here. So I've got everything new to go inside that. I will strip that down and I think it's probably good enough to chrome, so that should look nice against a nicely polished up set of Stromberg carburetors. On the Spitfire they're SUs, but on the Vitesse they are, on my Vitesse anyway, they are Strombergs. Plus obviously the spring as well. So that's what I've got at the moment, and then say hopefully at the weekend I will be getting a new diff, because that's a Spitfire diff, and I will be replacing that with a Vitesse differential. And you can see there the way the spring fixes to the differential with 6 studs, but on the Vitesse there are only 4 studs. That one and that one get taken off, and you just use the 4 outer studs. That's how it mounts, but it's solid. There's no pivot in the middle like I showed you on the other one. So there we go. So I've got to take all this lot off and replace it with the new parts. Likewise with front suspension. And here, that's all got to come off. But it's got to come off anyway, because I've got to do the welding for the front turret and the engine mounts. So it's a lot for me to be getting on with. But hopefully when I start fitting it back, this time it will be permanent. But it's done what I wanted it to do. This was, as you know, a dry run, so I could see what I needed to replace, renew or refurbish. So this has done its job. That's about it, I think, for this video. I think the next video will probably be me disassembling that leaf spring and putting the block into position, and then placing it on the diff. And I'll probably show you me taking out the diff and putting in the new diff. So it would be all that back assembly there. Got the prop shaft laying down there. That's ready to go. So that's it. So yeah, that's probably going to be the next video, is the assembly of that rear suspension and differential. And I might have a go at doing this as well, cleaning this up and see what I need to replace and what I don't. Certainly new discs, certainly reconditioned, or not reconditioned, but new pistons. If the pistons are sealed, or seized, and the bores are scored, then I'll go ahead and get some new calipers. But everything else is all ready to clean up. I don't have to replace any of that. I need to replace these lower trunnions and the top ball joint, but they're very cheap, so that's not an issue. In fact, none of this is expensive. The expensive part is these, and if you can get hold of them. But they look in good condition. The bearing surfaces are good. That's not a bearing surface, that, so that doesn't matter. That's a bearing surface, and that there is a bearing surface, and inner outer bearings, but they're okay. Right, I think that will do for today. So hopefully I will catch you on the next video, which may be at the weekend or a little bit after, I would think. Thank you for all your comments coming. Really appreciate that. It's very interesting to read what you've got to say about the project so far, and lovely to see new subscribers coming too. I'm not far off 1,000 subscribers now, I don't think. I'll have to go and check, which is amazing considering it's only been up for less than 4 weeks, this channel, and I'm already up to about nearly 1,000 subscribers, so that's going some. Okay people, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Okay, so bye for now. Bye.